Am I the idiot for taking back what I invested into my parents' home? My dad passed unexpectedly, and my mom could not afford their house on her own. So I moved in and started paying the mortgage, which was about equal to my previous rent, so it was a win-win. Loved my late papa, but every single inch of that house was under construction. The bathrooms had no walls, one of the windows was pulled out and boarded up, 0 rooms had proper floors, the roof was leaking, 1 toilet was missing, the list goes on and on. He was very good at home projects, but I'm sure he had ADHD because he was all over the place. Mom didn't want the house anymore for grief and mental health reasons, so we got it appraised in its current condition and it was worth less than what they owed on it. We made an agreement that I'd stay and work on it and pay the mortgage, and she moved out of state. Her exact words were, "Treat it like an investment." For several years in my own grief, I threw myself into it. I fixed or hired someone to fix everything. Little stuff I can do myself, like pipes and drywall, but I had the roof and every single window door replaced professionally, floors installed. I kept all my big-ticket receipts. The market boomed with the pandemic and we sold it for a profit. Mom left all the details to me and she signed electronically from a distance, making up some numbers for ease of the story. But let's say I dropped $20,000 in and we walked away with $30,000 after the mortgage was paid. I took my $20,000 back and gave the remaining $10,000 to Mom. She flipped out, saying I was robbing her. I rationally explained I just took back what I put in. I didn't even take back the rent I paid towards the mortgage all those years, only the big-ticket investment costs. That doesn't include micro purchases like paint, drywall, pipes, toilet. That would really be another few grand, not to mention my time and effort. And if I didn't do all this, she'd have sold for a loss. She doesn't want to hear any of this and says, "What about all the money her and Papa put into it over the years? Where is that money back?" And that I've had a place to live for years. I'm really defeated because she's treating me like a criminal, and I feel like I did everything extremely fairly. My extended family has been lecturing me. Legally, yes, I took her money because the house was in her name, and we never agreed to anything on paper, but in a million years, I never expected her to turn on me like this. And a verbal handshake has been good as gold all my life with my parents. Am I the AH? Edit. So I showed Mom some of the comments, and she's really dug her heels in that no one is considering all the money she and Papa put into the house. That somehow I'm getting my money back for several years of repairs. But she is not for all the years prior to that. No amount of spreadsheets or figures or logic is going to convince her I'm getting a fair share. Thanks to everyone for trying to support my logic. I also tried to explain that the net gain from her and Papa's efforts came to less than the mortgage based on that early appraisal, which she took as an insult, and I kind of feel like an AH now for implying their efforts weren't worth anything. So I guess lessons learned here: get everything in writing, even with trusted, typically logical, family, and I shall be forever branded as the child who stole her equity. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. You put in sweat equity and probably undercharged her for it on top of that. Next time, get everything in writing, even with family, especially with family. She's upset because she isn't walking away with a bunch of money, but you put the work in and added the value to the house that made it break even with the mortgage. Definitely not the idiot. I would give Mom space and not discuss this issue with anyone anymore. If family brings it up, then leave the room and refuse to be emotionally blackmailed. Comment 2, not the idiot, as long as you honored the balance on the house. Oh wait, you did. I'm really sorry for your loss and that your mom doesn't understand you renovated your home. She ran away because she didn't or couldn't deal with it. And that's semi-fine, but she should still understand and appreciate your efforts. She's the A here for not doing so. I do get her pain, but willful blindness goes only as far as sympathy, and that's always nothing to count on. Now for the update, thanks for sticking around for more of this saga. A lot has happened since the last post. Things went from bad to worse with Mom. She started telling anyone who would listen that I stole from her. It was like a wildfire spreading through the family and our friends. I couldn't believe it. I thought we were close, but now she was turning everyone against me. It was like she was a completely different person. Then out of nowhere, my uncle, her brother, came to me with a proposition. He said he could fix the situation. He had a plan to make a risky investment with the $10,000 I gave Mom. He promised it would double in no time, and then she could have her share and I could keep mine, and we'd all be happy. I was desperate to mend things with Mom, so I agreed. It was a gamble, but I was willing to take the chance if it meant getting my mom back. The investment was in some startup tech company my uncle swore was the next big thing. Weeks went by, and every day I felt the weight of that risk. It was all I could think about. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I was a mess. Then the bomb dropped. The company tanked, the money was gone, all of it. I was furious with my uncle, but more than that, I was scared to tell Mom. I knew this would be the final nail in the coffin. When I finally worked up the courage to tell her, she was livid. She screamed at me over the phone, said things I never thought I'd hear from my own mother. She told me I was dead to her. That's when I knew I had to cut her off. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I couldn't take the manipulation and the lies anymore. I had to think about my own mental health. I thought that was the end of it, but life had another curveball for me. My cousin, Mom's niece, reached out to me. She had overheard Mom talking to my uncle about the investment. Turns out it was all a scam. They'd planned it together to squeeze more money out of me. My cousin was disgusted by their actions and felt I had the right to know. I was in shock. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was there. My own family had betrayed me. It was a hard pill to swallow. I felt like a fool for trusting them, for thinking that they had my best interests at heart. I took action. I gathered all the evidence I could and went to a lawyer. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about holding them accountable for their actions. The lawyer said we had a strong case for fraud. The court date came and it was like something out of a movie. My uncle tried to deny everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. My uncle was ordered to pay back the money, and Mom was implicated in the scheme. After the trial, I was exhausted but relieved. I had stood up for myself, and while it didn't bring back the relationship I once had with my mom, it closed a painful chapter of my life. I've been rebuilding ever since, focusing on my own life and trying to move past the hurt and betrayal. It's not easy, but I'm getting there one day at a time. Thanks for reading. My half-brother's mom mocked my speech issues, so I became his mentor and showed him what karma really looks like when their lies came crashing down. So I'm not sure how much of a jerk I am for this, or whether I'm one at all. So please be honest with me. I'll start with explaining the background. So my dad has my half-brother from his first marriage. He and half-brother's mom divorced when he was still a baby. Dad met my mom when half-brother was 6, and they got married when he was 7, and I came along when he was 8. He was 11 and then 12 when my younger sisters were born. My half-brother spent the same amount of time in both homes, so he was a big part of our early childhoods. I, 16-year-old male, had a speech delay when I was younger. I didn't say my first word until I was 3. And then I also had speech issues, including a stutter, which is the most noticeable issue. This was something I really struggled with a lot, and my half-brother's mom made it awful. My half-brother would tell his mom everything that happened in our house and everything going on with us, even private stuff. She would call me intellectually disabled or make fun of me in my speech. She would mock me if she saw us. We live in a small town, so we saw each other out a lot. She blamed my mom, said Mom had faulty genes, and was a terrible mom for giving me that. She would also mock if one of us wet the bed when we were a little older. Half-brother refused to keep anything to himself. Dad took his ex to court, but they didn't care about this stuff. They said it was petty nonsense. It drove me crazy and made life very uncomfortable for me. A couple of times I ended up being diagnosed with selective mutism because the anxiety and stress from knowing my half-brother would tell his mom and she would belittle and mock me were so bad. His mom approached me at half-brother's high school graduation and thanked me for ridding the world of my intellectually disabled voice, and everyone was so much better off. Stuff like that really used to hurt me, but eventually it pissed me off because he knew how his mom was. I'm not close to him, and I don't ever want to be close to him because he clearly doesn't care. I had an issue with a substitute teacher recently. She struggled to understand me, and it was pretty humiliating because she made a big deal about it. Dad told my half-brother about it, and guess what? He told his mom. So then I ran into her while I was out with my friends, and she brought it up. Afterward, I asked my dad if he told his son about it, And he was like, of course. I told Dad his son told his mom. And why did he tell him when he knows that's what his son always does? He told me we're family and he has a right to know, so he's not in the dark. I told him he doesn't, and I don't care if it keeps him in the dark. That's where he should be when he blabs to his mom. My dad told me I wasn't being very compassionate or considerate of my brother, and I was being very unfair. Am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. Your brother has no entitlement to your personal information. Your father is more concerned about keeping his first child happy and included than he is about an adult verbally harassing his other child using information passed to her from their son. Your father is directly enabling the harassment of you. Sadly, I don't think he will ever stop and put you first. To do that, he would need to stand up to his ex, and he won't do that as he would probably lose his other son. He obviously feels his other son is the most important child. Comment 2, not the idiot. Your dad is, your brother is, but not you. I can't imagine knowing someone is bullying my child and giving them information for their arsenal. Your brother's behavior needs to be corrected, and if it can't be, your dad has to stop. Tell him to try having compassion and consideration for you. Sounds like his ex is still bitter he left and is taking it out on you. Hope you realize she isn't worth the trouble, but I know it doesn't make it any easier. Now for the update, thanks for sticking around after my last post. Here's what's been going down since then. Remember how I mentioned my half-brother's mom was a nightmare? Well, she took it up a notch. She started a rumor that I was getting special treatment at school because of my speech issues. It spread like wildfire. Kids I didn't even know were whispering and laughing whenever I walked by. It was humiliating. And guess who fueled the fire? My half-brother. He didn't start it, but he sure didn't help put it out. Then out of nowhere, my half-brother got into some serious trouble. He was caught cheating on a big test. The school was in an uproar. They were talking about expelling him. Suddenly, he was the one everyone was whispering about. I won't lie, part of me felt like he was finally getting a taste of his own medicine. But that's not even the half of it. My dad, being the fixer he is, tried to smooth things over for him. He pulled some strings, called in a few favors, and managed to get the school to give my half-brother another chance. But there was a catch. He had to do community service and be mentored by someone who had overcome personal challenges. Guess who they thought would be the perfect mentor? Me. I was furious. After everything he'd done, I was supposed to help him? But my dad pleaded with me. He said it would be good for both of us, that it could mend our relationship. I didn't buy it, but I agreed. Only because I was tired of the fighting, and I wanted to prove to everyone, including myself, that I was better than the pettiness. So we started this mentorship thing. It was awkward at first, but as we spent time together, I realized my half-brother was actually ashamed of what he'd done. He was sorry for the way he treated me. He even stood up to his mom when she tried to mock me again. It was like he was a different person. But just when things were looking up, my dad got laid off from his job. Money got tight, really tight. Tensions at home were high. My half-brother's mom saw it as an opportunity to strike. She threatened to take my dad to court for more child support, knowing full well he couldn't afford it. It was the last straw for my dad. He was already stressed, and this pushed him over the edge. He had a heart attack. It was mild, thank goodness, but it was a wake-up call for all of us. My half-brother was devastated. He blamed himself and his mom for adding to the stress. He told his mom to back off or he'd go live with his dad full-time. Things have been slowly getting better since then. My half-brother has been keeping his distance from his mom. He's been more protective of me and our family. We're not best friends or anything, but there's a new respect between us. As for my dad, he's recovering. He's taking better care of himself and looking for a new job. It's been tough, but we're all pulling together. It's funny how life works. You never know what's going to happen next. Thanks for reading. My stepfather makes me give up my room and pets for his daughter, and then my mom gets pregnant. So I sell my bed and sleep on the couch. But when they think I'm stuck for good, I find the perfect apartment and leave them to deal with their own mess. For context, around a year ago, I had posted about my experience with my mother and her fiance. They got married and we moved to a 3-bedroom apartment. I rent a room for $1,000 because originally they wanted me to share a room with my stepfather's oldest daughter to get closer to her. I refused, so now I have to rent a room, so that way I have more privacy. Sadly, that also means I had to downsize and sadly rehome my bugs and corn snake. My stepfather has a fear of bugs and snakes. I was absolutely torn after losing my cat that I had to lose my bugs and snake as well. I sadly didn't tell anyone in our family what was happening because I was afraid of being judged since my family disowned my mother. And since she married my stepfather, things have been going downhill. My mother used to be strictly sober from alcohol and drugs. She started heavily drinking and using Zaza almost daily and multiple times a day. I don't support this as alcohol and drug use will shorten your life, and she's been getting mildly physically aggressive. Now this is where I might be the jerk. I got Facebook, eBay, and Craigslist to start selling my stuff, so I can make extra cash quicker to move out. And bit by bit, my room has been disappearing, and no one has noticed. I have made around $3,000 from selling art supplies, old clothes, small furniture I don't use, old games and books. And I recently told a friend that I'm getting rid of my things, so that way when I move, I will only take my essentials and not have to bring all the random junk I simply don't use. My friend said that it was mean and manipulative to do that, as in my plan to move. I would be telling my mother the day of me moving that I would be moving so that way she can't keep me trapped in the apartment. I mean, she hasn't even noticed I sold my favorite collection of old G1 MLP toys. If she hasn't noticed, all my things are slowly disappearing. I heavily doubt that it's mean of me to just move out, though I am still taking some time still to make sure I sell all of my junk first. I've been cashing out my checks and hiding them in my room and paying her directly through my savings that I do keep for rent. I have been budgeting heavily as I buy my own food and my cat's food. I haven't been to the doctors in over a year. I should really go, but I need to save up some more money and working overtime even these past few weeks to keep making more money, but I only get paid minimum wage and even the overnight shift doesn't pay that well. So is it manipulative to sell my stuff before I plan to move out? Would that make me a jerk? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Your friend is clueless. It is eminently sensible to downsize and declutter before moving, even without the issues you have. It's clear as day to me that your mom will want you to leave everything behind because it belongs to the family house. Not the idiot and good luck in the future. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Your behavior sounds reasonable. Make your escape when you can. Maybe rent a lockbox at the post office for your valuables and documents, or store them with a friend so your mom cannot steal those to keep you from leaving. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. So last week was a total mess. Remember how I was selling my stuff quietly? Well, my mom found out. She stumbled upon my empty shelves while looking for her misplaced wedding album. She freaked out, accusing me of planning to leave like a thief in the night. I tried to explain, but she wouldn't listen. She just kept yelling about betrayal and trust. Then out of nowhere, she dropped the news. She's pregnant. Yeah, at her age with her habits. I couldn't believe it. She said it was supposed to be a fresh start for us, a new sibling to bring the family together. But how? With the drinking and the Zaza? I was stunned, but also angry. This was her way of trying to keep me tied down, I thought. The next day, my stepfather took me aside. He said he understood why I was selling my stuff and that he respected my need for independence. But he asked me to stay until the baby was born, to support my mom. He offered to lower my rent, even help me save up. I was torn. Part of me wanted to run, but another part felt guilty for even thinking about leaving my mom in this state. I agreed to stay, but I told him it was temporary. That night, I lay in bed, second-guessing my decision. I felt trapped, but also relieved that I wouldn't be leaving my mom alone. It was a confusing mix of emotions. The following days were a blur. My mom's mood swings were chaotic. One minute she was sweet, talking about baby names. The next she was throwing dishes because the TV remote was missing. My stepfather tried to keep the peace, but the tension was thick. Then my stepfather's daughter, the one I was supposed to share a room with, came over. She had been kicked out of her place. She had nowhere to go, and my stepfather asked if she could stay in my room for a while. I felt my space, my sanctuary, being invaded. But I said yes, thinking it would be just for a few days. Days turned into a week, and she showed no sign of leaving. She was messy, loud, and always had friends over. My room no longer felt like mine. I was losing my mind, but I kept telling myself it was for my mom, for the baby. Amidst all this, I kept selling my things, now more desperately than before. I needed to get out, but I also needed to keep my promise. It was a constant battle within me. Then the worst happened. My mom had a fall. She was rushed to the hospital, and the doctors said it was a close call for the baby. She was put on bed rest. My stepfather was a wreck, and I felt responsible. If I hadn't agreed to stay, if I hadn't let his daughter move into my room, maybe this wouldn't have happened. I decided then that I would put my escape plan on hold. I would stay until the baby was born, help out more around the house, do whatever it took to make things right. I sold my bed to make room for my stepsister, and I started sleeping on the couch. But here's where I messed up. I got too comfortable. I stopped looking for a new place, stopped saving as aggressively. I thought I had time, that I could fix things with my mom and then leave on good terms. Yesterday, my mom came home from the hospital. She was different, quieter. She thanked me for staying, for sacrificing my comfort for the family. It felt good to be appreciated, but it also felt like a chain tightening around my ankle. And now I'm sitting here on the couch that's become my bed, realizing I might have just given up my last chance at freedom. I'm stuck, and I don't know if I'll ever get out. Thanks for reading this mess of an update. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.